So next we got David Pakman. Check out David Pakman. Over 1 million subscribers, over 1 billion views. Support independent media. David Pakman. He is a progressive liberal. Handsome man though, right? He's good looking. He could do movies. Independent movies on Tubi, probably. Hey, speaking of Tubi, check out Second Degree Burn, a Burn Notice story now streaming on Tubi TV. Okay, so David Pakman had Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramswamy on his show, and I thought this was important to look at because it kind of highlights classic progressive liberal tactics when they get into a jam or confronted with truths they just cannot admit to. So let's plow on into this. David starts by asking a question. I guess he's asking every candidate. Let's check it out.
Often my first question when we speak to candidates right now, it's just sort of like a sanity check, which I think you will pass, honestly.
Let's hope.
Is there any way to interpret that Donald Trump actually won the 2020 election, or did he lose the 2020 election?
Let's see if Vivek is tripped up on this.
The way you're framing the question, you're asking me a very specific question. Is there any way? Here's one important unexplored strand. Okay. The Hunter Biden laptop story and its systematic suppression. I'm a data-driven guy.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's pretty fair to say some people would change their minds knowing what they know now about Hunter Biden, right? So because of that, Pakman plays dumb. What else can he do? He can't be like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that was really fucked up the way that happened. He can't admit to any of that. He should. That's the kind of guy we thought David Pakman was, but he's not. Let's see this classic progressive liberal tactic, the old play dumb. Let's check it out.
And it is, do you have an opinion as to, is it the explicit pictures of Hunter that would have in some way changed people's minds?
What, do you think it was the pictures or the way that like it was all these weird involvings and dealings he has with like Ukraine? Or do you think it's like the things with him and the money between him and his dad? Or do you think it's like, yes!
Bribery fraud scheme, or like what about it?
So I'm not speaking for the survey respondents, but I can tell you what speaks to me.
Yeah.
Actually, because I wouldn't have changed my vote. I voted for Trump, right? So I wasn't one of the survey respondents who said I would have changed my vote because of it.
Good.
So here's what does speak to me, and I think it's relevant. Let's just take this outside the scope of political partisanship. The Burisma payments to Hunter Biden are a deep problem. $5 million paid by a Ukrainian company, privately owned by somebody who at the time was sitting on the National Security Council in Ukraine. Relevant now because it did result in an impeachment of a US president that was Trump, who called for further investigation of that in Ukraine. But that wasn't the only geopolitical consequence of it.
The Paxter is going to make a rebuts video, kind of rebutting this, saying, you know, Ivanka and Jared Kushner and blah, 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 they did the same type of shit. Fair enough. I mean, kind of the point of this is these people are all creeps, and the Paxter should just say that instead of going tit for tat, but he doesn't. He'll never admit to any wrongdoing of the left. And the other thing is that this is different.
I think it has deep-seated implications even now for say what many people on Russia's side of this say. Well, you have a U.S. president whose son was dealing, when that person was vice president, with actually the Ukrainian government indirectly, accepting what in any other context we would call bribes, so much so that President Obama's staff actually raised this with Biden, only to be shouted down by it. This is a bipartisan concern. That's a real issue. Also, the shell companies created to do business with China and the Chinese government, again, paid millions of dollars. That is relevant information on the eve of a presidential election.
So that would be the difference, right? That this is like right on the eve of a presidential election. That would be the huge difference. Okay, so moving right along. This next clip is David being very passive aggressive, kind of bitchy, dare I say cunty,
Question is, from a practical standpoint, is your perspective on Trump calculated in order to sort of be there in case Trump really can't run a campaign because he gets arrested a third, a fourth, a fifth time, maybe even sixth? Is the idea...
So, yes, funny. Yes, okay, David, that's funny. But you see what he's doing. It's very bitchy, very passive. A third, fourth, he'll be arrested again and again. Yeah, but what keeps happening? Nothing. That's like if you kept getting arrested for nothing. Like, is that funny? I mean, it'd be funny for some people, but not for you, would it, David? When the shoe's on the other foot. Or sandals. I don't know what you wear. Crocs, probably. You look... I bet there's Crocs down there. I know business up top, leisure on the bottoms. Okay, this is the Trump effect. You know, when Trump says anything, there's a good portion of Democrats that just fucking lose it. They can't even stand listening to this guy. David doesn't even understand this because he's such a arrogant narcissist. All right, so let's check it out.
Percent of this country becomes, you know, I would say mentally ill in a certain form, psychiatrically ill.
I've heard you say that.
Yeah. They agree with things that they otherwise wouldn't have agreed with. They start disagreeing with things they otherwise would have agreed with just because he's saying them. And I think that for whatever reason, I'm not yet having that effect on people, and I don't think I will.
No,
and that
you
allows
don't
us
seem
to
to make
unite the
people
country.
crazy. You know, the interesting thing about the psychiatric thing, you know, your background is in, if I understand, undergrad.
This is where David's going to either A, misread the situation, or B, purposefully misread the situation. It's very clear to me, and I feel like it's got to be clear to everyone, that Vivek saying when Trump says something, Democrats, whatever he says, they're going to like the opposite, essentially. And now David's going to try to take this in some weird space where when Trump talks, the 30% are the Trump voters and they're the lunatics. And sure, yeah, there's a lot of Trump lunatics out there. That's not what I'm saying, guys. Absolutely. But
biology and then business. Mine is in economics and communication. Neither one of us are doctors. But one of the interesting things is I was in Chicago last weekend. I was sitting very close proximity to a table of MAGA folks who were talking about the primary.
Folks, just bear in mind, too, when people use the word folks, that means people they hate. Just remember that.
And I was just listening in like a fly on the wall. It was an incredible sociological experience. As a progressive, I was out of my bubble.
His echo chamber of everyone telling him how great he is and everything he thinks is amazing.
And they start talking about, you know who's really in charge? It's Obama through the military. And then someone else says, you know, the vaccines, this and that and the other thing. And someone else says, you know, we got to get rid of the deep state. And one guy goes, you know who I like? I like that Indian guy. They didn't know your name. They didn't know your name, but they referred.
They didn't know your name. The Indian guy, they didn't even know your name. But hey, they were like, hey, I like this Indian guy. But they didn't know your name, you silly fucking. What kind of shoes you wearing? Moccasins? I got Crocs on.
Referred to you as that Indian guy because he's not part of the deep state, et cetera, et cetera. The definition of what we mean by psychiatric illness, a lot of the stuff I'm hearing from folks about JFK Jr.'s alive and all this different conspiracy stuff that surrounds MAGA, it seems as though when we start just saying psychiatric illness, I don't know if it gets us to where the country is and what would be best for it necessarily, which is why I wonder about this talking point you've come up with about Trump makes a third of the country.
Right. See what he did? Do you see what the fuck he did? Let's hear it one more time. Look how he tries to wind this. Look how he tries to wind this the other way. He unwound this and rewound it a different way.
Stuff I'm hearing from folks about JFK Jr.'s alive and all this different conspiracy stuff that surrounds MAGA, it seems as though when we start just saying psychiatric illness, I don't know if it gets us to where the country is and what would be best for it necessarily.
So this is just a sign of like someone extremely arrogant and a narcissist, right? It's so clear what he's talking about, and David just made it basically about himself in all of his thoughts. Yeah, I like what you're saying there about how I'm amazing. Keep talking. No, I was just talking. I said, do you want to get some food later?
Which is why I wonder about this talking point you've come up with about Trump makes a third of the country psychiatrically ill. What are you getting at when you say that? That he's too divisive?
No, I think.
And also, too, he just explained what he meant. So he's going to explain this now for the second time because David maybe was just thinking about how pretty he looks today. Who knows?
I'm describing the fact of many people in this country disagreeing with policies that they otherwise would have agreed with, that I believe are good for this country, that Trump believed are good for this country, that they put themselves at odds with just because he's the person arguing for them. Like at the southern border, for example. I went to speak of Chicago, since I'll reminded me of my experience of going to Chicago recently.
And this is also why this Vivek is pretty fucking great. Everything someone gives him to like try to shut him down, not only does he throw that back in their face, he brings up another point to make them even worse. So now check it out. He's going to bring it even further.
You didn't sit next to these people I sat next to, I'm guessing.
No, and actually I share with you a commitment to get outside my own bubble too.
Yeah.
I just check it out though, because he's going to use that one more time. And Vivek, it's actually really calculated. He takes all these little things that these people do. I've noticed him do this in other interviews, but this is what we're talking about right now. So he lets David think he's kind of like throwing these little hissy fit jabs in, you know what I mean? And then he's going to take him back later and kind of throw him back at David. It's very funny to watch. Let's keep watching.
Yeah.
So I went to the south side of Chicago where Republican candidates don't go.
Right.
So nearly 90% black audience, most of whom are viewed as deep Democrat country. We held a couple of town halls. I got my hair cut at a barbershop. We visited South Shore High School in Chicago, which is partly being converted into an encampment for migrants who are crossing the southern border. I'll tell you what I found. I found some of the most ardent supporters of sealing the southern border who I have met in my life. Didn't come at a conservative MAGA rally. It came on the south side of Chicago. And I think that that's just one example among many. I found some of the fiercest opposition to our war in Ukraine, which, by the way, I share in common. And so I don't think the real partisan boundaries that the media teaches us to accept, those aren't the real divisions in this country right now. I think there are different divisions.
Damn it. That's my whole channel, man. Dividing the country. Stop. Vivek. Shut up. It really is. Like, that's all these people do. Like, Pakman is such a con artist. Go to his videos, and you can count how many Trump videos he uploads. How many in the last 2 days? Let's see. In the last 48 hours, how many videos has David Pakman uploaded about Trump? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Are we going all 2 days? 11, 12, 13. 13 Trump videos in 2 days, guys. David Pakman is obsessed with Trump. It's all he can think about. He sexualizes Trump. That's what he thinks about when he's having sex with his wife or partner. Who knows? David Pakman probably has a partner. Hey, he probably has a wife, but he calls that his wife his partner. Hey, my partner's at home. Oh, you're gay? No. Just my partner in life. Oh, your wife? Sure. How many? 14, 12? How many videos was it? I already forgot. 12 Trump videos in 2 days? You're obsessed. You're obsessed, David. Get over it. These guys can't get over fucking Trump. Jesus fucking Christ, man. Okay, okay, so this is great. So now Vivek's gonna throw this folks back in his face. Check it out.
There's plenty of occasion for folks who step outside their bubble, whoever that is, to roll their eyes, and whenever they walk into that other room and walk out and dismiss whoever they heard as a bunch of crazies.
Oh! That's so great. He's like, hey, David, you know how you just talk shit about a bunch of people who are just sitting there having a conversation? Yeah. Check this out, because this is great. Well, he's going to add context to this, because what David likes to paraphrase, these guys were crazy talking about Obama's really in charge.
Well, Obama's still in charge secretly through the military. He's a little nuts, right?
Well, let me just that's facile. Okay. Let's just double click on that a little bit.
Sure.
What's the intuition? What's the intuition there? The intuition is that Joe Biden, the duly elected president of the United States, supposedly, the person in charge, is actually in charge making the decisions. I don't think he is. I don't think maybe people in the Democratic Party think.
Okay,
I'm-
but are
I'm
there
gonna
are
get
there
to-
any of these examples you wouldn't defend? Like we've gone to Trump rallies and they say Trump's actually still in charge because the generals swore an oath to him. Are you willing to say is there some version of that one that you think
Trump
is
is
true?
not in charge. That's why he is taking great pains to run for president of the United States. in
Okay,
an
so that
election
one's
we're
just
holding.
wrong. That one you're not
Yeah,
going to equivocate on.
But
No kidding, you stupid fucking idiot. That's why he's running for president, because he's not president. How does that make any fucking sense? Yeah, no, Vivek should fucking substantiate every fucking claim from every U.S. citizen ever made now. David Pakman, great fucking debating strategy. You fucking idiot. And like people, his fans will be like, yeah, that is a good point, David. It's not. It's not a good fucking point, David. Okay, so now the Packster has to do his recap video because, you know, obviously he got his fucking ass handed to him for about 30 minutes. He does a recap video 4 days later because he's really got to bite on all these parts and check his facts, get all the data, double check it.
That the lack of publication widely of the Hunter Biden laptop story arguably gave the election to Joe Biden. And what Vivek said was that lots of people said they would have.
And then here's a poll I found that that proves I'm right. Oh, cool, David. Yeah, you're right. Oh, here's a fucking statistic. I voted for Joe Biden. Had they fucking said all that shit about, you know, that we know now, I wouldn't have. So there's right there. How about that one? You know what I mean? Like I vote. Okay. Pack recaps trans kids, okay? Pack's a sick son of a bitch, too. The Packster's a fucking pedo, I think. Check it out.
Argument 5 from Vivek. He said, I believe gender dysphoria in kids is a mental health condition and should be treated as such. He cited the DSM-4 and 5, said if a child has gender dysphoria, it shows that there's something else happening in their life that must be addressed. He said it's not compassionate to affirm what is ultimately just confusion, and says that we will look back at allowing kids to undergo what he called genital mutilation as an injustice. He says people are going through this because of a fixation on trans in our culture, that there's a contagion of sorts. Now, there's a bunch.
Nailed it. Perfect recap.
Are going through this because of a fixation on trans in our culture, that there's a contagion of sorts. Now, there's a bunch of problems with what he said. First of all, asserting that gender dysphoria is a mental health condition is not necessarily controversial. In fact, as I pointed out, it is dealt with as a mental health condition.
Point made. Awesome. Let's move on. And now this is just shocking for me to hear personally. Let's check this out.
Without taking a position on the good or bad of puberty blockers, the side effects for puberty blockers short term are quite mild. It's headache and fatigue, muscle ache, maybe insomnia, can affect mood and weight to some degree. We do need more research on the long-term effects of puberty blockers.
You think? So here's the thing though. He's talking about this in relation to not what they were intended for, right? Personally, it's just shocking about how mediocre his reaction is about it, how blasé it was. You know what I mean? I mean, it's actually kind of mild. We'll just they're just fucking around with it. It's very strange to hear. And that's what they're doing, basically. They're just running experiments on these freaks, these freak kids. I'm joking, guys. Just relax. Everyone be cool. But they are running experiments on kids. They're not freaks. Not yet. They will be if they keep taking all these weird drugs and cutting their bodies up and stuff. Yeah, you will be a freak if you start sticking things where they're not supposed to go and shit. Yeah, that is freakish. But at this point in time, they are not. And then what's this last one? I think this is just a great Vivek clip. Let's check it out.
If gender dysphoria is such a condition of suffering, and I believe it is, in the rare instances in which it occurs, why on earth are we now going out of our way to create more of it? By purposefully weaving in the possibilities for gender confusion at ages where literally, and there's good evidence to back this up, when there's one case of gender dysphoria in a school, it spreads. Like you could do the R squared math on this, right?
I love R squared math too. So that really relates to me.
It's like you could compare that to COVID, the spread of COVID, and you can epidemiologically model this stuff. Yes, this is actually having an effect that we're going out of our way to create a condition that we say creates more suffering. I'll give you one example in New Hampshire, where I travel frequently.
He gives you, like, I don't know, his definition. And then here's a quick example, just super quick. It's kind of what I do.
The state just shot down a piece of legislation. All it said was, if a kid in school identifies as a gender different than their biological sex, the parent has a right to know. And over a lot of activism and opposition,
Pretty reasonable, right?
they shot that bill down, which is odd because the whole premise is that kids are at heightened risk of suicide, in fact. And so a parent doesn't have the right to know if their kid's showing up in school with the condition that the whole premise for the movement was the kid is at higher risk of mental health condition or suicide. It says there's something else going on here.
Yeah,
right? This is not compassion.
we talked about one of those laws recently. I expressed the same concern, which is,
Did you?
I understand
I had some concerns about that too. Let me think real quick.
the two forces here. The idea of we don't necessarily want to, quote, out a child that is not ready or maybe outed into an unsafe home environment on the one hand.
Shut up, you justifying fuck. You're a sick fuck, David Pakman. All right, moving on. What do we got next? Jeremiah!